I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like Live right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Have a lot to get into this morning, so I'm going to get started right away. So please like, subscribe, join, reach out, tell everybody to come on in. If you're seeing this now live, welcome. Good morning. Thank you for being here. If you're seeing this later or hearing it later on any of your favorite podcast platforms, thank you and greetings to you as well. And for those paying attention to the Gregorian calendar, Happy New Year. Otherwise, peace. It's another Friday. Have a good weekend. All right. Because my man Skipp Coon is coming up in the next hour, one of my favorite MCs out of Jackson, Mississippi, and specifically to talk about my HBCU project. There's a lot I wanted to get to. Brother Kaba is not going to be joining us this morning. He wishes everybody greetings, and similarly, if you celebrate, enjoy yourself. Happy Kwanzaa to him and everybody else. As well, which is exactly what we're going to be talking a little bit about this morning. Anyway, but there's just so much that I wanted to try to get to try to make this point and to try to make these connections to ultimately talk more about Hill Harper's Black Wall Street app, which I've been looking more closely into. Let me just go ahead and get started. So again, greetings everybody. And the first thing I wanted to do, I got this new book, or new to me, actually. I think it is new, but I think it came out a little while ago. This year, 2021, University Georgia Press, Prophet of Discontent, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Critique of Racial Capitalism by Andrew Douglas and Jared Loggins. I'll be coming back to this as we get closer to King's birthday, but I wanted to start, and I did make a note jokingly, paging, because this is connected actually. So somebody, if Killer Mike is ever interested or, wanted to revisit our, the idea of a working relationship, this would be a good place to start, because this is something I actually talked with him about in our one conversation last year or the year, whenever that was. Specifically about Andy Young, who is a mentor of sorts, as he says, to Killer Mike, and who has helped secure $40 million of JP Morgan investment for Greenwood Bank, Killer Mike's Black-owned bank initiative. But this is exactly what I was talking about when we talked. When he told me Andy Young was his, guiding light, I said, without this level of detail, of course. This is how the book starts. Chapter 1. On March 27th, 1968, a week before he was killed in Memphis, Martin Luther King Jr. joined Stanley Levinson, Andrew Young, and several other confidants for an evening gathering at the New York City apartment of the singer and civil rights activist Harry Belafonte. Earlier that day, King had met with the poet Amiri Baraka in Newark, a city still reeling from the deadly riots of the previous summer. It was a city King feared that was poised to erupt all over again. At the time, King was working to organize a Poor People's Campaign, what was to be a multiracial march on an occupation of Washington, D.C., a mass demonstration meant to press the American people into serious confrontation with material poverty. So it's an important point that I know I and others have been making for a long time, that King's plan was not to march and go home. It was for an occupation. camp settlements, permanent, etc. I think he talked about rotating them out, 3,000 people at a time, until there was major legislation enacted to address the ongoing war and poverty, et cetera, and so forth. A mass demonstration meant to press the American people into serious confrontation with material poverty. And in New York that evening, King was in a surly mood. He confided in Belafonte and others that Newark and his meeting with the militant Baraka had gotten to him, that suffocating conditions there had an increasing willingness among the city's youth to embrace violent resistance tactics, were once again testing his long-haul strategy of nonviolence. I wholly embrace everything they feel, King said of the militant contingent in New York. I have more in common with these young people than with anybody else in this movement. I feel their rage. I feel their pain. I feel their frustration. It's the system that's the problem. It's choking the breath out of our lives, end quote. As Belafonte recalls of this conversation that evening, it was Andrew Young, the future U.S. Congressman and ambassador to the United Nations, who unwittingly ratcheted up King's anger. I don't know, Martin, Young said. It's not the entire system. It's only part of it. And I think we can fix that. King was having none of it. I don't need to hear from you, Andy. He clapped back. You're a capitalist, and I'm not. The trouble is that we live in a failed system. Capitalism does not permit an even flow of economic resources. With this system, a small privileged few are rich beyond conscience, and almost all others are doomed to be poor at some level. That's the way the system works. And since we know that the system will not change the rules, we are going to have to change the system, end quote. The only thing that I struggle with in terms of how that is recounted, and with Belafonte being said to have, how did they put it? There was some almost like shocking shift. That it was his meeting with Baraka that had gotten to him and sort of changed something. Because if you go back and look at the speeches over the summers, to the SCLC leadership over the summers of 1966 and 67, you can read where King is arguing with Andy Young, having the same conversation. So there's no doubt that meeting with Baraka is going to mess with you on some level, of course. But it almost reads as if before that meeting, King was like, this was a brand new discussion. So that's my only little thing. But most importantly, is that he draws very very clearly that distinction between himself and what Andy Young was trying to do, and is to this day trying to do, and is still a problem. Wrapping ourselves in a Black version of capitalism as if that's some sort of an advance. King was very clear, as it's recounted here, that capitalism is not a solution, Black, otherwise, or any. And as I've showed in other videos and other presentations for a long time, actually, when people like Maggie Anderson and others want to claim that King was for buying Black and for Black business, a radical, Black business development, he was very clearly not. And he says as much in Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? Businesses are not enough. There needs to be a massive change at a federal level. In other words, as I keep arguing, there has to be an assumption of political power. How we define that political power, how we get that political power, that's another discussion. But that has to be the goal. So with that basis, after this, the interview last week with Brother Cambone and some of the still ongoing aftershocks of that conversation, I was in a discussion with a friend of mine. I want to say yesterday or the day before, and in that back and forth, where the question of traditional African values versus the cracker ideology of socialism in the context of this being the Kwanzaa season, I actually wrote back to my friend, socialism is better than Kwanzaa. That's the indisputable truth and a problem we face when wanting to be more African. Kwanzaa is to politics what Bitcoin is to economics. So I'm open to be checked on that, obviously. But that is what I was feeling in the moment. And I must say, it is what I feel just in general. So, but because I don't want to be disrespectful to those who engage, certainly as Cambone and others, in traditional African practices, and somebody who supports all of that, I don't want it, and not wanting to add to the contestation between the so-called two groups. I wanted to try to develop another approach to that this morning, in the context of building towards this critique of Hill Harper's, modern day sort of Andy Young version of things. But that is what but it is ultimately what I think, that as a goal, as a politic, as something to attune ourselves towards, socialism is better than Kwanzaa, and Kwanzaa is to, and I do think that Kwanzaa is to politics what Bitcoin is to economics, and I think I'll make a case for that, but it's simply what I'm arguing is that the symbolism and the promise is missing a direct and radical organizational assault on the political apparatus and our attempt to achieve power. So the symbolism distracts us from what should be our goal of achieving political power. All right, so with that, let me pull up one or another thing here. And go on. So one thing that I pulled up is that I was reminded of is a classic Black Agenda Report commentary from the late Bruce Dixon. To sort of start to begin to situate where I'm coming from on all of this. Let's see, should put it like this, right? No, I think that's going to have to work. Let me just, all right. And I think if I make it, let me see if that helped. His point is, of course, is, as he says here, why I don't do Kwanzaa. And of course, he starts with his tribute to Bunchy Carter and Jerome Huggins, John Huggins. And essentially, he says, I don't do Kwanzaa. I just don't, never have. And the very thought of it evokes some difficult memories and feelings for me. His main issue, by the way, all of the links to everything are already, I believe, in the show notes to this episode. But for many of us who took part in or were simply aware of the Black Panther Party in the late 1960s and early 70s, the Kwanzaa holiday is inseparable from the career and persona of its inventor, Ron Karenga, now a tenured professor in California. Back in the day, Karenga headed up an organization called US as a tool of COINTELPRO, the federal counterintelligence program directed at movement organizations. Karenga's US organization murdered 2 leading members of the Black Panther Party in Los Angeles, Alprentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, and 2 more in San Diego, Sylvester Bell and John Savage. To my knowledge, Mr. Karenga has never expressed the faintest remorse or regret for these murders or for his part in furthering the nefarious aims of federal and local police agencies in their assault upon the movement of those times. Karenga was later convicted, along with his wife, of kidnapping and torturing 2 women in his own organization, a crime for which he served 4 years in prison, and one of which he still claims to be innocent. Some of Karenga's close and credible associates, however, like former US chair Wesley Kabila, maintained Karenga was not only responsible for those women's torture, but that was part of an ongoing pattern over the years. By the way, John Henrik Clarke also added that there was a complexion issue to those tortures, where the dark-skinned women were tortured and the light-skinned women were treated relatively better. What rankles many of us about the annual hoopla around Kwanzaa, and what should disturb those engaged in building today's movements against injustice and oppression, is that the elderly Mr. Karenga, much like Bill Cosby before his fall, is enjoying an ill-deserved and unrepentant victory lap. To this day, he has utterly evaded any accountability for his part in the murders of Carter, Huggins, Savage, and Bell. For us, what others call Kwanzaa has become a time to remember and celebrate the contributions of freedom fighters whom Karenga's US organization murdered. In those times, one of the highest priorities of government was to prevent the street-level spontaneously formed organizations in every Black neighborhood from becoming political. Organizing inroads with this aim were a key reason in why Chicago Panther leader Fred Hampton was targeted and murdered, also by COINTELPRO. But while widely respected by those organizations, Chicago's Fred Hampton was an outsider to the street tribes, appealing to them from the outside. California's Bunchy Carter, on the other hand, was an insider among those tribes, presumably a high priority target of COINTELPRO. Bunchy was less than 30 years old. In his mid or late 70s, the unrepentant Karenga is now celebrated by figures like the establishment designated Dean of Black History, Henry Louis Gates, who put him up as an authority on the struggles of the 1960s, including the Black Panther Party, in one episode of his PBS show, The African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross. That was, I remember, I believe I even spoke with Bruce about that episode. That was particularly, Karenga is regarded as a mentor to Temple University's shameless red-baiting Professor Molefi Asante, who justified his underhanded firing of Philly's Dr. Anthony Montero with accusations that Montero was a tool of communist apparatchiks. Karenga pens a regular column in the Los Angeles Sentinel in which he absurdly claims his own organization was targeted by COINTELPRO, just as the Black Panther Party was, instead of acting as an instrument of COINTELPRO. If anybody's interested in that case from some years ago, that is at Temple University, I have a great interview with Anthony Montero and some of his, I believe there were a couple former student organizers, an audio interview at imixwhatilike.org. If you all, that's one thing I did not put in the show notes, but if you're interested. So at least part of what I'm arguing is that I am largely in support of what Dixon is saying here. Well, just what he said there. He said it well enough. And again, the link to the entire piece is there. It was interesting that I saw an interview with Judge Joe Brown, with whom I disagree on a lot of things, albeit not on the issue of the assassination of Dr. King, which I think he is correct in saying was not conducted by James Earl Ray. But he said something similar about Karenga, and apparently had his own direct interaction with Karenga in LA at one point in time. So, and certainly one of my favorite interactions with Mama Marimba Ani at a conference was her tightening me up, and several others on this issue as well, simply because I had referred to Karenga as Malana. And she took umbrage with that and went to, and checked me and said, he shouldn't be referred in that way. He's not a king. He's this and that and all this other stuff. But it was so there is this concern in the broader community, but something that I also largely agree with. So, but then, but as I also said, like there is this a strong part of me that doesn't want to, that does appreciate how others have and do use Kwanzaa, and more broadly, who engage the cultural traditions of our ancestors and create this nationalist, materialist, whatever divide that still goes on. And then I don't want it to be hostile. I want there to be acknowledged disagreement, but we do have to figure out how we're going to work together on this. So I kept looking, and I found a piece that somewhat satisfies that concern, written last year. Happy Kwanzaa. It's not just a celebration, but also a solution. And this is a piece by Loretta Laurie Fisher. Get my notes queued up. And she raises some of the same issues in that I'm attempting to raise here. And I need those notes to pop up though. All right, here we go. Anyway, she goes through some of the history Kwanzaa created during the Black Power movement. She talks about Karenga and the US organization. Then she says here, Dr. Karenga restated that Kwanzaa is a cultural celebration, but not a replacement for Christmas, so as not to alienate the millions of Black Okay, that was weird. I don't know what just happened there. Okay. I don't know what just happened there. Um, but I did just happen to see, and so I don't know to what extent what I was saying got lost, but yeah, Roland Martin hit that button. I don't know what that was. That was weird. Um, Dang. So I don't know. So what happened? What happened? What? I'm on it. Look, I got the Ethernet cord. I got everything. Listen to me. I've done every single thing. Like I'm telling you, I got the Ethernet cord. I got the extra Wi-Fi, but it's not on right now because it's the Ethernet cord. Everything's plugged in. I don't know what just happened there. So I don't know how much. Damn, how much did I just miss? How much was just lost there? 8:24. So that's 2 minutes. Hmm. Second article talking about the article in Kwanzaa ancestry. You have to move to the next topic. Nah, the ancestors are telling me that I need to just focus. 821 I cut out. Oh man, that's whack. Okay. The short of what I was saying is that well, I'll start here. Somebody in the chat said Kuji Chagalia is all we need. Self-determination is all we need. Um, my point is ultimately that that's not true, because at some point to be self-determined and arriving at self-determination or and achieving sovereignty is going to require some sort of relationship with other people. Now that relationship can be maybe based on more equitable power dynamics, but on some level, they have to agree not to invade. They have to be made to agree not to invade or to whatever, or to trade, or to whatever. There has to be engagement with other people. Is my point. That's my only point. So as I was trying to, so as I'm just trying to say to go back to defend my earlier argument that socialism is more important than Kwanzaa, and I'm going to come to the next level of argumentation here, is that because socialism, the idea of a scientific socialism, means that the is a way to assure and to give practical political substance to an ideology, to a vision. Kwanzaa doesn't do enough of that, and I think where I found, and because of what was also just said in that previous article, that uh, that Christianity has a head start and has the colonial structure promoting it, and because Karenga has himself said that he doesn't mean for Kwanzaa to be a challenge or a threat to Christmas, and why it starts the day after Christmas, leaves that lack of confrontation out there, and leaves it leaves undefined or poorly defined what it means to be self-determined or to engage in cooperative economics. As I'm going to get to, the black capitalists of the world are arguing, they're using Ujamaa as a concept to support their own black capitalist endeavors, because there is no overt political platform beneath the symbolic overtures of Kwanzaa to make it to make it be more meaningful. By the way, if you well, anyway, so okay, so here's where I found this piece from Walter Rodney, Tanzanian Ujamaa and Scientific Socialism. which again is linked, that I think is informative here for a number of reasons. This article attempts to identify Tanzanian Ujamaa with scientific socialism and certain ideological essentials. It is an exercise in theory, bearing in mind that historically the theory of socialism preceded the establishment of socialism as a system in any part of the globe. A necessary piece of ground clearing must be performed by advancing the negative proposition that Tanzanian Ujamaa is not African socialism. Such a declaim. So in other words, I understand the context is a little bit a lot different. This is Rodney's discussion of Julius Nyerere in Tanzania in the early 70s, and the concept of African socialism. But he says some things in here that I found, I think, useful for what I'm trying to argue is is my preference for socialism over Kwanzaa. Such a disclaimer may appear curious and even presumptuous in view of the fact that in 1962, Mwalimu Nyerere referred to Ujamaa as the basis of African socialism. But there are several reasons for keeping the two concepts widely apart. When African socialism was in vogue in the early 1960s, it comprised a variety of interpretations ranging from a wish to see a socialist society in Africa to a desire to maintain the status quo of neo-colonialism. It is therefore essential to disassociate the anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist stance in Tanzania from a caption that is that has been preempted by non-revolutionary African leaders. This is sort of my point also here. It is therefore essential to disassociate the anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist stance of Tanzania from a caption that has been preempted by non-revolutionary leaders. So when I read that, one of the first things I'm thinking of, we have to disassociate the anti-capitalist and anti-imperialism from Kwanzaa. Recognize that it has itself disassociated itself from anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist positions, which allows for it, as Karenga has said, to not challenge the imperialism of Christmas and Christianity, and to not challenge the capitalism that continues to inform or guide what many wrapping themselves in African culture. It doesn't challenge the wrapping, so to speak, of African culture and the capitalism that it protects. Conversely, to associate Ujamaa with the category of scientific socialism seems to be flying in the face of assertions to the contrary by Tanzanian policymakers. Scientific socialism is held to be synonymous with Marxism, communism, and the like, which have been held at arm's length by Tanzanians who propound Ujamaa. The contradiction is more apparent than real. In part, it disappears when one takes into account the above-mentioned factor of significant political ideological advance from Arusha to Mwongozo. To reopen the issue, one must go back to the first principles to first principles and rescue the essence of scientific socialism. Socialism emerged as an ideology within the capitalist society. For Marx, scientific socialism is quite simply socialism that is scientific. African socialism, and of course what Marx was arguing, as Rodney talks about here, is that Marx wanted to challenge the utopian socialists, and that's why he argued for a scientific socialism, or what has been called a scientific socialism. African socialism is utopian in its refusal to come to grips with the class relations in which Africans are enmeshed, and it is romanticized, and in its romanticized ignorance of the stages of African historical development. It is the contention of the author that, in contrast, Tanzania Ujamaa is correct in its perception of the principal motion of its own society. The assertion that there are no classes in Africa is often used to justify capitalist investment in the continent, and in recent times it has come under criticism from progressive African thinkers. And this is where I think he gets really, anyway, this is where I think there's so much interesting in this anyway, utopian socialists promoted models in which capitalists cooperated with their workers in the new society. They sometimes assigned a major initiatory role to the bankers. Leopold Senghor's proposal was to socialize agriculture, to establish public utilities as a mixed sector, and to leave banks, commerce, and industry to capitalist enterprise. The sum total of these arrangements would be African socialism. So again, whether it's dismissed as utopian or described as utopian or African socialism, it does not, as Rodney is pointing out, as I would argue is the same with Kwanzaa, it does not specify an anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist politics. So it allows for, as he's describing here, people to wrap themselves in an African cultural behavioral practice that leaves unaddressed the imperial capitalist colonial structures. Having extolled the virtues of traditional African living in Africa, socialism and rural development proceeds to identify both the inadequacies and the fact that communalism as a way of life and a value system has been constantly eroded under the pressure of African involvement in capitalism. So one of the things that we keep hearing about that is brought up in the discussion and defense and promotion of Kwanzaa is similar to what was just said in the chat. We don't need all these other ideologies. We just need self-determination, or we just need our traditional African living. We don't need communism. We don't need Marx, because we were already engaged in African communalism. Marx comes along, as Clark and others have said, as a Johnny come lately, and gives us what we don't need. But Rodney does something here that, if I had read it, I don't remember it. I certainly don't remember it being argued in this way, or it's just good to be revisited. So that I think is really important. One, he says, but changes in technology in the mid-19th century had convincingly demonstrated that the artisans were doomed to extinction. So what he says here, I didn't need to really get into that, unfortunately. What he's doing there is showing that because of technological advance and because of the colonialism that Africa had suffered, the intermediary position that is often said that must be taken by all people, including Africans, that meaning go from feudalism to capitalism to socialism, is not required. In other words, we don't have to have the step of capitalism, which was largely skipped in the African experience due to colonialism and enslavement. The technology allows us to skip that step. And as Marx is often misquoted, he as we'll get to in a second, he himself did not say that we need to go through, in all cases, feudalism to capitalism to socialism. In other words, the conditions that will allow for socialism and eventually communism can be developed outside of specific spaces, in this case, the continent of Africa, and then used to have people in the continent of Africa and elsewhere skip that step because it has not occurred anyway. There has not been a capitalist, and what Marx and Rodney show here is that Marx already showed this is already happening in the Russian context, in the outer communes, in the agricultural communes of Russia. Anyway, in a comradely letter to Vera Zasulich in 1881, Marx explained that his description of the historical inevitability of the foundation of the capitalist system was expressly limited to the countries of Western Europe. So again, Marx in his own lifetime understood that he was not speaking as a universalist for all people, and that his analysis would have to be, or the analysis he was working with would have to be applied to the specific conditions of specific groups at specific times. However, so Marx vigorously disavowed any intention of using his model of Western Europe to provide a historical philosophical theory of the general path every people is fated to tread, whatever the historical circumstances in which it finds itself. Although Marx completely disowned the proposition that a people must move to socialism via capitalism, it is understandable that bourgeois academics ignore this and interpret Marx to mean exactly what he said he did not mean. An effort has already been made to underscore the idea that for Marx, different paths to socialism did exist, precisely because of varied experience of movement from one social phase to another. It is of some value to the history of philosophy to keep the record straight on this issue, although one is primarily concerned not with establishing Marx's correctness, but rather with confirming the truth of the observation that the movement of different peoples through history has had significant variations. So, of course, as many of us have argued, one analysis is not a cookie cutter one for every place. But to begin with, communalism was not socialism. And this is the important point. This is such a brilliant point that Rodney makes, that it seems like those of us who would have read Marx, even in an individual, non-studied way, would have sort of caught this. But it's just brilliant. That's why that's why Rodney is dope. Anyway, among the many reasons, of course. So communalism was not socialism. Collective production was narrowly restricted on an ethnic, clan, and geographical basis, and the egalitarian principle of distribution was limited by the low level of production, so that societies came nowhere close to fulfilling the needs of all their citizens. Hence, Marx's description of the stage as primitive communism. Admittedly, in Ujamaa, the basis of African socialism, Mwalimu Nyerere sounded a note rather similar to that of the standard version of African socialism when he asserted that we in Africa have no more need to being converted to socialism than we have to being taught democracy. However, taking the continent as a whole, Tanzania is exceptional in that even at the end of the colonial period, the communal forms were still recognizable. Later in the paragraph, this was the first of the conditions which Marx and Engels laid down when discussing how socialism might have been built on the basis of Russian commune. Actually, let me just finish that. Let me just go back in it. So earlier in the paragraph, this is the consequence of its people having been, that is of Tanzania, of its people having been relatively little involved in capitalist money economy of mining, settler plantations, and cash crop production. The low degree of internal stratification at the time of constitutional independence was reflected in the national cohesion and the solidarity of a single mass party. Between 1961 and 1967, there was an increasing differentiation, so that socialism and rural development dealt with the core of the problem by determining that socialism could only be built in Tanzania by halting stratification and the creation of a rural proletariat. This was the first of the conditions which Marx and Engels laid down when discussing how socialism might have been built on the basis of the Russian commune. The possibility of regenerating traditional communalism also depends upon factors outside of the national political economy. This model for Ujamaa is as much in the present as in the past. If certain socialist values can be recovered from communalism, then equally there is the possibility of importing and modifying values and concrete attributes of socialism in any part of the globe. When Mwalimu Nyerere referred to the weakness of traditional African communalism, he mentioned technological inadequacy. This factor should be given greater emphasis because it was technological inadequacy which meant scarcity and led to stratification and the internal evolution of classes in parts of Africa before contact with Europe. So on the one hand, I'm attempting to use Rodney here to make the point that Kwanzaa, Ujamaa, etc., tradition African concepts have to be amended and updated and given the concreteness and the scientificness of a socialist struggle with the idea of redistribution and scientific addressing of all people's needs, given the world in which we live today, where the technology is different, where the technology does exist to allow for the production of all that everybody needs. At the same time, what Rodney is showing, directly or not, is that the simple fact of technology in and of itself does not satisfy pre-existing social inadequacies or social injustices or social relation or the failures of previously existing social relationships. In other words, simply having the technology does not mean, absent a political movement or political power, is not going to help. In and of itself will not solve the problem. Marxism, when considered as synonymous with scientific socialism, means the application of scientific method, of which Marx was a founder, to the study of any given situation. The Marxist who considers the stress on traditional African communalism as theoretically incompatible with a scientific socialist approach must bear the onus of proving that Marx's brief application of his own theory was unscientific in the Russian case. At the same time, the non-Marxist seeking to isolate Ujamaa from what he imagines to be scientific socialism must at least be brought up short in light of evidence that Marx himself explicitly countenanced the possibility of a development towards socialism that integrated peasant collectives from the communal epoch. I may not have this right, but as I'm interpreting this and the way I'm trying to apply it today is simply that The materialists of today cannot throw away Kwanzaa and traditional African cultural values. They must recognize, or they should recognize, if being honest, that there is a parallel between Africans appreciating traditional African values and what Marx is saying about his own people appreciating their own communal backgrounds. Rodney seems to be doing here what I admit, and have admitted to some friends, fantasized at one point me being able to do. I'm just not obviously capable in the way that Rodney was. And the times are different and we're different people. But as I'm reading this, what Rodney is saying in today's context, materialists can't get rid of the cultural practices. At the same time, those who want to maintain traditional cultural practices must recognize the time we're in, and must recognize in the context of the value of scientific socialism that Marx wasn't just being a lunatic European trying to apply his worldview to everybody, but as Rodney is showing, he was applying the African traditional worldview to his own context by saying the Russian communal traditions have to be scientifically expanded given the technology to make sure that it's not just the peasants in the agricultural worlds who are living a communal socialistic existence, but that everybody, including everybody connected to the process of that food or agricultural production in the cities and elsewhere, would have to be able to enjoy that too. So where we are today in a quote unquote modern society, where most of us are disconnected from agriculture and communal societies and traditional formations, we should, at the one hand, recognize the value of traditional African cultural practices, but infuse them with an updated radical politic that brings substance to them and then prevents them from being abused in the way, as I'll continue to argue, they are now. And it also allows, I think, for beyond the personality of Karenga and the particular politics of Karenga, and I think that was all I had from this piece here. It gives us the opportunity to say, look, we may not agree with the man, but we recognize why African people are drawn to these practices, but we also recognize their shortcomings. Anyway, so I put the links in the show notes, not specifically because I want to be checked and keep going and have this conversation. And I want people who have a better understanding of both Marx and Rodney to read that and get back to me, and show me where I'm right or wrong, or on any of this. But again, I'm saying socialism is better than Kwanzaa, but I'm not saying that other than just to make a provocative point and maybe share my bias, but also to say I don't want the people in the Kwanzaa camp, so to speak, to be kicked out or kick me out, so to speak. Or in other words, we have to figure this out. We can't just dismiss each other as narrow nationalists or cracker ideologists. We have to figure this out. And I think Rodney has done that for us. Or has offered a great step in that direction. All right. Let me just make sure I got everything that I wanted to say from that. Right. But his point about African communalism not being socialism is, I think, really important, because the communalism that would have existed in traditional African societies doesn't hold today. The relationships have changed, technology has changed. So something has to be updated there. All right. So with that said, because there has been so much, and I'm going to beg Skipp Coon to give me just a few more minutes. He's not here yet, but it's going to take me just a couple more minutes. I'm going to run just a little bit late here, so I'll beg his forgiveness. And in fact, let me just send him a quick text to beg his forgiveness. I'm running a little over. Please bear with me. Thanks. Because in revisiting this issue of Bitcoin and the Black Wall Street digital wallet that Hill Harper has put together, there's been a new sort of push that he and others have engaged in that comes around Kwanzaa, where those same ideas are being used, that self-determination, cooperative economics, et cetera, and so forth are missing. By the way, Brother Geechee Motivator put up and I appreciate this. This sort of gets to my point, and I've tried to raise this with her, but I haven't been able to. But Geechee Motivator put up a picture of saying that, you know, my book on buying power and Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard's book on cooperative economics are essential reads, and I appreciate being noted with her and included. But at the same time, as I said to him, and as I've tried to say to her and you know, some others, there's some important differences. For instance, that I think she does what Baba Amos Wilson did in terms of referencing Du Bois and his love for cooperative economics and his discussions of Black consumption and consumerism. They quote Du Bois in the 1930s and leave out the last 30 years of his life, including his more aggressive and radical adoption of socialism, and of course his then leaving, showing the shortcomings of cooperative economics, absent socialism, absent political power. They don't work. So I think that's an important point. And she does, Dr. Nemhard, misread the buying power piece. So the potential that is for cooperative economics to save us or help us is greatly limited, and I think misunderstood by many. But which is sort of is sort of my argument here, that this underlying belief that we have this 1 point whatever trillion dollars in buying power, that we have an ability to pool our resources in ways that will mitigate the ravages of capitalism, that I think misses the point that we should be striving for, which is what Rodney was trying to get us to, and all the other, so many other greats, that we need political power, needs to be a struggle, we need real socialist redistribution, and that doesn't have to be seen as inconsistent with traditional African values. And it doesn't even have to be inconsistent with our infusion of Marx, because Marx himself wasn't doing what many of us misunderstand or claim he was, that is, trying to impose his worldview on all of us. That's not what his goal was. He explicitly said the opposite. But as I've said, to the extent that these two camps exist, they don't read each other's work. So it's nationalists who want to dismiss Marx because he's white are not doing so on the basis of reading him or reading how he is interpreted and put to use within those in the African world who struggle mightily and with great effect. So all right. So we have this, and we got to watch some of this, because this is the front page to the Black Wall Street digital wallet that Hill Harper has put together with his colleague Naja Roberts, I think is her name. And I want us to watch a little bit of this. This is the video that's on the front page. I did download the app and all of that, but we're gonna get into some of that here. But let's start watching some of this, because
200 different cryptos out there. 99% of them are meme coins and basically, just the trash. And so you need to educate folks first, because what we want to do is grow wealth and build wealth, get people into ascending value asset classes, not get them into meme coins. We're trying to not do what Robinhood does, because Robinhood is my partner. We don't want people just getting on trading just to trade, right? Because you end up losing. We want to build wealth. We want you to dollar cost average into ascending value asset class, which is my goal is to have every Black person in America have 1 million Satoshis in their wallet. Wow.
All right. So let me just stop it there real quick, because he uses this fancy language a lot. And in all the interviews he gives, and I've watched a lot of them at this point. He says the same thing with the same language that's meant, I think, to sound sound good. Ascending asset value class. So what he's doing is using investment language to couch standard Wall Street speculating investment as some sort of radical political economic shift of power. So having people be put in ascending value asset classes is just having people invest in stocks that will go up. So he's saying not what they call shit coins, but Bitcoin, the real deal, is an ascending value asset class, something that's going to permanently, and as other supporters, Isaiah Jackson in his book, Black Bitcoin, at least in interviews he's given about his book, I haven't read the book yet. He's saying you never can lose money in Bitcoin. It's not possible. And as we're going to get to with Hill Harper, it is unlike fiat currency. It is protected. It is all these things. So the investment is solid and is good, and will always be an ascending value asset class. How they make this claim is never supported. It's never explained. And as you look at the value of Bitcoin, it goes up and down with sometimes wild shifts, sometimes based simply because somebody like Elon Musk says, I like Dogecoin. So the value in Bitcoin drops. But over time, it has gone up in value and currently is somewhere, I want to say, around $45,000 to $50,000 for one Bitcoin. But that is as a stock investment, not as a currency, and not as anything other than a speculative Wall Street financial product. The other thing he says is Satoshis. He wants every black person, literally every black person, to have 1 million Satoshis. What is a Satoshi? Satoshi, named after Satoshi Nakamura, the eponymous. Well, it's not an eponym. Satoshi Nakamura is it Nakamura? Satoshi Nakamoto is the name given to either the individual or the group of people who most people think it is, who put this Bitcoin stuff together, who wrote the initial white paper that we've talked about elsewhere. It's fascinating. It's 9 pages, has nothing to do with redistribution, political power, or, it's just about how people, anyway, it's just anonymous blockchain private investment that takes the power away from the central banks and the governments. How doesn't really explain that. But read the white paper yourself. And, a Satoshi is, so named after this founder, is a sliver of a Bitcoin. It's a piece of a Bitcoin. It is them, just like with the dollar, you have a dollar, you have a penny, a nickel, a dime, etc. Just like with a gold bar, you have ounces, etc. They cut it down in ounces so you don't have to carry around the whole bar. The same thing here. You cannot afford, most people cannot afford a full Bitcoin at $40,000, $50,000 per coin, but you can invest in a Satoshi, which is, as I'll show you here, just a piece of a Bitcoin. I'll come back to Hill Harper there in just a second, but I just want to make sure we're clear on this. It's the smallest Bitcoin unit. It is named after this creator of Bitcoin currency and is equivalent to 100 million. So one Bitcoin is the equivalent to 100 million Satoshis. When you do the Bitcoin converter, Satoshi converter, because Hill Harper says he wants every black person to have 1 million Satoshis, that's about $480. So he's saying every black, as we'll come back to, every black household, every black person in every black household should have at least 1 million which would give each Black person in this country the equivalent of $500 rounding up. For a family of 4, that's 2,000. So for, and that this is what he's claiming is going to create wealth for the Black community. You know what? Because we're a little bit short on time. Let me just skip ahead just a little bit to make this one point. So remember what he's saying he wants everybody to get into this ascending value asset class. Have every Black family every Black person have 1 million Satoshis, which is about $500, and that this is going to this is what is going to bring about a change. And brother Skipp, I see you showing up. I hope you got the text. I need just a couple minutes, man. Please hang out, and we'll get there in a minute, man. Apologies to you and everybody. He says that everybody should have 1 million Satoshis. Every Black person, child, adult, whatever, should have 1 million Satoshis, which is like he's saying buying real estate on the blockchain. So it's like buying land when land was available. His ultimate argument is that if we get in now, if every Black person does this, as Bitcoin becomes more used, more valuable, which is what Bitcoin promoters are hoping and predicting, it will, as he says, make the world come to us. So somehow every family being worth, for a family of 4, $2,000. Everybody has every person in the family has 1 million Satoshis, worth just under $500 each. So everybody's worth, every household is worth about $2,000 to $2,500. How does that solve anything in terms of a wealth gap, political power, redistribution, job creation, investment, healthcare? How does having $2,500 more change any of that? It would be helpful if, in fact, that was a liquid and it wasn't just some paper value somewhere or some digital ledgered value somewhere, but actually that could be used and taken out. It also suggests that Black people are going to be able to catch up, as we've already shown, to the already high accumulated the accumulation of Bitcoin that is already taking place among billionaires, major corporations, etc. Harper goes on to say, for instance, because there will only be 21 million Bitcoins mined and no more, unlike money that can be printed endlessly, thus devaluing the money we have, Bitcoin can never do that. On the one hand, he's right. And as I pointed out in my buying power work, George Jackson already made this point a long time ago, that any increase in salary is met with an increase in the cost of living or inflation, which devalues the salary. That it is, I agree, and we've already talked about this, that and I showed you the Jake Tran video, and there's many others that have been pointing to this, and even Harper points this out, that almost all of the, like 80% of the dollars in US dollars currently in circulation have been printed in the last couple of years, meaning that the value of the money we've had has gone down. I get all of that. But the solution, as George Jackson pointed out 50 years ago, isn't a new currency. The solution isn't some secret anonymous exchange of value, digital or otherwise. It is the assumption of political power that doesn't suggest that we can circumvent capitalism and banking and central banking with a new currency. It says you circumvent that by organizing it out of existence. by engaging in a struggle that is meant to satisfy the conditions and needs of everybody. To the previous point, the infusion of a George Jackson, of a Walter Rodney, of a socialist, radical socialist politic does not allow Ujamaa to be or Kujichagulia to be redefined along Black capitalist lines. It does not ignore the class struggles within our community. It does not ignore the ignoble actors in our community. Bitcoin and Black capitalism do the exact opposite. Wrap themselves in Black collective strength and power and symbolism to do what? To invest in Bitcoin, which is Hill Harper's, as he says here, and as he talks about elsewhere, his digital wallet, which I did sign up for. I didn't set up the bank, and we're going to get to this part too. You got to set up a bank account. You got to set up your bank account in connection with 2 other entities that he is working with. I'm going to show you that in a second. But his argument is that if you put money into his Black digital wallet, now he says it's Black owned, but specifically it's Hill Harper owned. What I have not been able to identify specifically is how he makes money or how much he makes off of each trade or each exchange. That's something I think is based on the kind of trade or exchange that you engage in, and I would have to actually do it to see it, because it's not written in any of their literature. It's not in any of their facts. It's not in anywhere. But digital wallets in general, crypto wallets in general, and there are differences. A digital wallet is not the same as a crypto exchange wallet, but they make money off of the transactions. And as I'm going to show you in just a second, they make money for others off of the transaction. So when you sign up and put in and start an account and buy your first Satoshi, Hill Harper makes money, as do other white-owned entities, as do the people who already own Bitcoin, the value of which goes up when all of us start investing, even in our small Satoshi amounts. You end up buying a portion of someone else's owned Bitcoin. What he also leaves out is by saying that there's a 21 million cap on the Bitcoin. As I found out, 3 million Bitcoin have disappeared already. People losing their passwords, people being ripped off, whatever. So there's only going to be 18 million that is going to be available at the end of the day. And they're already being bought up by the major players, which we've talked about in other videos, billionaires, hedge funds, and so on. So the idea that Black people are going to, on a small retail level, invest in Satoshis, and somehow this is going to collapse the wealth divide is fantasy. What it's going to do is put money in Hill Harper's pocket, and in those who he works with, and in those who already own Bitcoin. All right. So for instance, one thing you'll notice when you sign up for a wallet with Black Wall Street, Hill Harper's wallet, the one thing you'll notice is that you have to set up an account, or set up your wallet to your bank account using one or both of. So in fact, let me just show you from his website first. Let me just show you that first, and then I'll come back to that. If you look at the front page here, I think it's right here on the front page. Yeah. Our app is fully secured by 2 leading financial platforms, Prime Trust and Plaid. All right. Because remember, he's talking about this is Black owned, and this is how we're going to get rid of the divides, and we're going to create generational wealth for Black people. Well, all right. So obviously these are not Black. All right. Prime Trust, the one-stop shop for financial infrastructure of fintech innovators, today announced, this is back in July of 2021, end of July, They announced the close of its $64 million Series A round. The timing of the raise coincides with the firm having crossed $100 million in annual revenue run rate and 250 million API calls per month from its B2B customers. This is the first institutional round of funding for Prime Trust. Again, who is Prime Trust? It's I don't know, it's these folks. It's you know what, let me just see. CEO of Prime Trust. Thought it was right. Scott Purcell. Where's his that's just the Bloomberg sheet. LinkedIn. Okay, so Prime Trust, and I want to go back to what that announcement was, because I'm speculating, but I suspect that you know. So this is Scott Purcell, who's all about infrastructure for non-fungible tokens and crypto innovators, and is the CEO of Prime Trust, who, as I just showed, in July, got through a Series A round of funding, meaning that it attracted more venture capital, raised more money for itself based on its increased customer base, of which Hill Harper is now, and all of us who sign up through him are now part of. So earlier in 2021, I want to say it was in February, March, or April, that they really launched the Black Wall Street app. He signs up with this, they get their money. So I'm assuming, with some help from Black Wall Street wallet, Prime Trust made its nut, so to speak. It got its funding. And the way basically that works is venture capitalists want to see that your tech or your platform or your business is growing, and if it hits a certain mark, they come in with another round of money. So he went out, Prime Trust went out and found Hill Harper. Hill Harper signed up with them and got them and helped them reach their mark. So we are helping them. Now, he said here that he also said in that clip that he doesn't want to be like Robinhood, the other platform that rips people off, that robs the hood, as they say. But of course, Plaid works with Robinhood and Venmo because it's just an intermediary that helps bring people's money out of their banks and onto these into other people's accounts. So again, my point is this symbolic claim of black ownership and black power and black economics is so wrapped up. It's not even autonomous at this level. Blockchain is not black owned. Bitcoin is not black owned, despite Hill Harper's hopes for what it will be in the future. He talks about elsewhere that he doesn't support or his platform doesn't allow for trading in anything other than Bitcoin right now, but he's also himself mining Ethereum. So a very black capitalist enterprise, a very individual black owned operation, works in close proximity with a white corporate world. Again, being black owned is Hill Harper owned, so that it's not even necessarily a collective. And if it is, maybe just Naja Roberts, his colleague, is the only other part. So it's black owned, just like all these other black businesses. They're too small. They don't have black employees. They don't generate a lot of revenue. They're not autonomous. They're creating revenue for the already established broader economy, controlled and dominated by whites, rich whites, and corporations in particular. And by the way, the one thing I've been noticing is that the more I look into this, the white world, check the YouTube channel CoffeeZilla for an entertaining look in all of this. And there are some others where they are actually pro crypto people, they are very different in their, they discuss this very, very differently with their audiences. They're all about catching scams and encouraging caution. By the way, Harper, to his credit, when he says dollar cost averaging, it's a fancy phrase, but what they're really saying is be cautious, put in a small amount on a regular interval over time that you can afford so you don't go crazy and hurt yourself. I appreciate that he at least does that. And if Harper said, hey, look, I've started this thing, I'm gonna make some money, I'm gonna help you make some money, we're gonna maybe make a few of you some money, we're gonna do this, I'm gonna encourage responsible investment, I mean, I would have no problem with it. It's when they start making these other claims, as is the case here, that he has referenced and similarly makes with equally no substance. Closing the wealth gap, Black America and Bitcoin adoption. Investing in Bitcoin for African Americans has become a what do I have to lose scenario. The Black and brown community's wealth gap has widened through Jim Crow segregation, redlining, mass incarceration, high unemployment, and a lack of financial literacy. That is such garbage. Bitcoin is not centralized by any entity, corporation, person, or country, meaning it is not controlled by a single authority or managed in one place. This lack of centrality removes the fundamental flaw of bias. Bitcoin does not care what you look like, what culture you come from, your gender, or your religious background. This is another one of the absurd arguments that Harper and crypto pushers advocate. We need to have political power, not some decentralized unregulated, no authority oversight economic system. This is exactly, so going back to Walter Rodney, we need scientific socialism, organized planning of an economy that makes sure nobody suffers. We don't need a decentralized, anonymous, encrypted, uncontrolled, unregulated exchange that somehow people are arguing is going to solve the problems of inequality and exploitation and abuse, that we're going to somehow circumvent capitalist exploitation and colonial exploitation by investing in a speculative Wall Street product, financial product that is unregulated, and that somehow this is said to be free and freeing and liberating. It's the exact opposite. This is my broader point. We're being encouraged to find individual economic solutions to collective political problems. Look at what else it says. Adoption among the Black and brown demographic is surging. According to a Harris poll, you had 30% of Black and 27% of Hispanic investors own cryptocurrency, compared to only 17% of white investors. To me, that's a sign. If there's a lack of financial literacy, that's the sign. White investors, first of all, have more resources, have more options, can generate a greater return on what they invest. So, of course, they're going to be more diversified in their investments. Harper is telling Black people to spend roughly $500 a piece to get 1 million Satoshis. $500 of investment is not going to change anything. It's not going to change individual relationships, economically or otherwise. It's certainly not going to change collective relationships. And if you're, I don't even do this stuff, investing, that is, but I pay enough attention to it to know the arguments. If you're solely invested, or if you're over invested in one commodity, in one product that's a dangerous place to be in. So for all of these black and brown investors to be wrapped up in cryptocurrency is not a good sign. Though, of course, Bitcoin Magazine, promoting Bitcoin for its own financial benefit, as is Hill Harper, isn't going to say that. They're going to promote this as a positive. So this author says, I also had to learn about Bitcoin under these odd circumstances while trying to remove my fiat way of thinking. Many African Americans fall behind on educating themselves about Bitcoin and the basics of financial literacy, but that too is changing. So somehow, a Walter Rodney is financially illiterate, but those who are studying crypto and Bitcoin, they know what they're talking about. Social media applications like Clubhouse have the highest focus for African Americans seeking education in a network of like-minded individuals focused on crypto. So that's what we're advocating now in Bitcoin Magazine. Daudu Amantana, the author, forgive me for mispronouncing your name. That's what's hot. Let me tell you something. So I haven't read, and then so this author's talking about the books that they've read to get knowledge on this. Bitcoin in Black America, I've not read that yet, Isaiah Jackson, but I've seen so many of his interviews right now. I'm waiting to get the book. I've reached out to him on Twitter to invite him on this platform. It's woeful. The argument is woeful. And what's worse is a book that I did get and read, Bitcoin and Black Powernomics by Will Hobdy, which apparently he claims was co-signed by Claude Anderson and encouraged to use the name Powernomics and to get the word out by Claude Anderson. Please go see the video I just did recently on Claude Anderson's economic analysis. It's horrific. This book, I notice it sounds, I don't mean to be this disrespectful, but the book it's a mess. It doesn't do any of the things it claims it's going to do. It takes, I mean, it says it's going to give you a history of Bitcoin and of money. And it gives you like Wikipedia phrases. I don't know. I mean, I guess we could, maybe another day I'll go through it, or if anybody knows Will, he can come on and we can talk about it. But it is just not. It is not an accurate history of money. It does not explain the origins of money. It shows no analysis of capitalism or colonialism. It shows no understanding of the function of money. As Adam Smith said in his own Of Origins of Money chapter in what was it? What they call the Capitalism's Bible? What is it? Wealth of Nations. Money was invented to manipulate people. So I get that fiat is not the answer, but crypto isn't either. And being in Clubhouse, my goodness, that can't be where we're going to get our organized political analysis. Clubs such as Black Bitcoin Billionaires, Crypto for Black Economic Empowerment, and Crypto Church, I had to highlight that, have attracted hundreds of thousands of members. Of course they have. It's like a church. In honor of the historic Black Tulsa, which we've already exposed, once the epicenter of Black wealth in America, the well-known actor and author Hill Harper has launched a fintech app called Black Wall Street. And he's quoted here saying, we have to encourage Black ownership, and that's what we want to do on the platform. We're starting with a digital wallet and the ability to start to learn financial literacy, create community, and allow people to invest. Investment and so-called financial literacy are mythologies. Black people are not poor because we are financially illiterate. And somehow understanding or claiming to understand investment in Bitcoin or crypto, that's not financial literacy. Financial literacy would show that investment in these products is not sustainable, is not going to help the collective. And this is why Bitcoin should be viewed. The average Black family has $33,000 in their 401k. The average white family has an average of $168,000. And this is why Bitcoin should be viewed as a form of investment savings for people of color. So I alluded to it earlier. On the one hand, they're claiming that this is currency, but it's not used as currency. It's not going to be adopted in a major way and used as currency. And they're telling you to use it as an investment for future value. So like any other speculative product, you should invest, and that this is somehow going to magically close this gap. But that's not how it works. Imagine, so people have asked it. So I've been asked repeatedly to get economist Richard Wolff on here and economist Michael Hudson. Richard Wolff, his people have said no. I don't know why, they just said no. So I showed you in his video a couple weeks ago why he shows how he shows the cryptocurrency is nonsense. The other person has been Michael Hudson. I've reached out to him again. Hopefully we'll get him on because as I just oh man, we just don't have time. Damn. I have videos set up to deal with this. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll I don't know what we'll, maybe we'll, I don't know, maybe I'll just do another, I have to do another one of these where I just start with this. So this was Michael Hudson, Super Imperialism, the Economic Strategy of the American Empire. And the reason, one of the reasons it's been brought up, one of the reasons why there's a resurgence in value is he was just interviewed by Max Keiser, the crypto pushing, though two economists that I've talked to, including Mark Blythe on this show, said that Max is not himself invested in what he promotes. So that's suspicious. But in a back and forth over the value of cryptocurrency, where Michael Hudson is saying it's nonsense and equates it to people buying Andy Warhol paintings and claiming that that's going to close, change economic relationships. Max has said that this book has gotten a resurgence of popularity because it talks about how the dollar, the American dollar, is used as an imperial tool, which it is. So cryptocurrency advocates have turned that into an argument, but that's why we need to get away from the dollar and get into crypto, and we'll bring down imperialism is part of the claim. But Michael Hudson, if you read his work and listen to his argument, what he's showing is that there is a whole political apparatus of power behind it that makes it work that way. And investing in something that's not going to have the backing of a government or political power isn't going to change anything. So they get into some of the details as to how, and honestly, I think Michael Hudson I think he could have done better to make his point. Not that he was wrong. It's just that Max is one of those flowery, fast talkers, and Michael is an older, more staid, and I think honest actor in all of this, and is saying, essentially, I'm simplifying, but the point is, if you don't have political power that makes the currency have meaning, the currency is backed by the gun. So they even get into the whole thing of, well, if El Salvador gets into Bitcoin, well, then the question is raised, well, what will then the economic hitmen do? And if people have read the economic hitmen book, I forgot the guy's name. The whole point is, if you don't fall into the economic policy of the empire, the assassins come next. So this idea that you're going to set up some sort of crypto free zone and or a dollar free zone, empire free zone, and use cryptocurrency, and they're just going to sit back and is silly. Which is the same point I was having in the debate around socialism versus or political struggle versus African cultural traditional practices. There is no place to retreat and escape from the world and just do your own thing. There is no Wakanda. The only way for there to be a Wakanda is to do what Wakanda did in the movie, which is to set up a relationship with the CIA and the imperialists, and to kill the killmongers who are trying to have a real revolution. That's how Wakanda exists. And that's what Harper and them are advocating here. Make me some money so that a handful of us can be in some isolation, in some bubble away from the ravages of white supremacy and capitalism. And accept that as your revolution. Oh man, there's so much more I meant to get to. All right, hold on, because I don't want to. All right, so all right, so I'll say, let me just wrap by saying this for now, and then we'll come back and do a whole part 2 on this. Maybe Monday, just do it Monday. Hill Harper, coming out of Brown University and the Harvard Kennedy School, is no different politically. What I was going to say is because I had this other video. I can't say. I gotta read it differently. All right, hold on. My closing statement here. All right, because I was going to show you this clip of when Kim Kardashian was pumping Ethereum Max, which is not Ethereum, and as an example of all of the popular promotion and mythology around cryptocurrency. So, and I'll just say, Hill Harper coming out of Brown and Harvard Kennedy schools, no different politically than Kardashian coming out of pop culture. Neither come out of radical political organization, and neither challenge their own class position while claiming broadly a kind of Kwanzaa cooperative economics that does us no good. We cannot afford to ignore the value of the value Marx has provided, far more value than is stored in a fucking Bitcoin, by the way. Marx is way more valuable than whatever value is stored in a fucking Bitcoin. For all the talk of store of value that Hill Harper and others want to keep talking about. And what does that mean? It just means that it's going to be worth something more than it is tomorrow. It's just another silly investment being passed off as revolution. Martin Luther King Jr., the problem with Andy Young, MLK explained the problem with Andy Young, as I started the show with, who advises Killer Mike in Greenwood Bank. It's self-connected ideologically to Harper's Black capitalist efforts. King was saying we need public policy, political power, not business, not banking, not foolish, vague, symbolic claims of nationalism. And all we're getting are that. So anyway, this is why I started with that saying socialism is better than Kwanzaa. That's the indisputable truth and a problem we face when wanting to be more African. Kwanzaa is to politics what Bitcoin is to economics. Both take us away from the radical traditions we need to be engaged in that are attempts to maintain political power. That's what we need, not investment. All right, take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with Skipp Coon, and we're going to get into this discussion of HBCUs, which I think is actually quite relevant to this one. And then I'll come back and check some of the comments that I'm sure are just wondrous and see about what I can either tighten up or add when we get back to part 2 of this on Monday, which is clear because there's more, and I didn't get to. Wow, I took way longer than I thought. So anyway, let's take a quick break. Come right back with Skipp Coon. Don't go anywhere. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Oh, my bad. There he is, the main man, Skipp Coon, Jackson, MC, African, my main. My favorite MCs of all time. That is the truth, by the way. You didn't show up, by the way. I just remember, man, you didn't show up for my book launch like I wanted you to, but nonetheless, you're one of my favorites, and I think you're anyway. I hope I haven't missed too much of your more recent work, but anyway, it's good to see you, man. Skipp Coon, Jackson, Mississippi. What's good, my man?
Welcome. Man, it's good to be seen, brother. I just wanted to tell you that, I love you, man. And you just blacking out. Like you was blacking out, like you was in your tail far, you was in your tail far going in, man. I really appreciate that, bro. Like, and man, look, I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened. I was driving back from DC when I missed your book thing. Like, so
that's right, because you were up here. You've been doing work up here.
Yeah. So I was up there, and then I came on back. I was driving back, and I missed it. But yeah, man, you're a maniac, bro. You are a maniac.
So listen, man, you have said one of my favorite lines is, "We have too many JJs. Who's going to be a James?" It's one of my favorite lines in hip hop history because it's not only politically accurate, it not only speaks to that. I don't know. It maybe it's considered toxic today, but that manhood that you know, and that James Evans, the black father I adopted as a kid on TV, straight up.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's it. I don't want no more JJs. Who's gonna be a James out here?
Man, look, man, the boy stood up. You know what I'm saying? The boy that shot JJ. You know what I'm saying? He was ready to do something to him, man, and saw what was happening in that boy. Like, man, Giant Evans was really that dude for real. Anyhow,
so listen, man, you contacted me the other day and said, you know, you were asking about my struggles with HBCUs and my HBCU project that I encourage people to go to imixwhatilike.org and get in there, jump in and say what you got to say. The link is right there. The Not a Different World project. So if you would lay out what your question was or your concern, and then we can go from there. I know we talked a little bit about it privately, but you know, let's just do that.
So essentially my question to you was, I understood that you were like being critical of the institution, but I didn't understand the purpose of that criticism. Like what was the desired outcome for us as the people after hearing your argument? Like what were we supposed to do differently? How are we supposed to interact with it differently? Because again, like just seeing it on Twitter and just seeing pieces of it, it just kind of came off as bashing the black schools, right? And it's like, well, I know that he wouldn't do that. So what exactly is happening, you know, with the whole deal?
So first of all, I appreciate the question, and I definitely appreciate you reaching out with the question. And I do need to be more clear because so the short answer is that I want Black people to have a more clear recognition of what these institutions are and what they do and how they treat people, and get past some of the promoted mythology and propaganda, and then to, just like with everything else, organize political power and influence over these institutions to make them do more of what we often fantasize that they are doing. So again, a lot of the way these universities are promoted are as sort of like Black utopian spaces, where Black people can get this authentic experience. They can be free from some of the ravages of whiteness, et cetera, and so forth, which is all true. I mean, all of that is true. But at the same time, kind of like what I was just arguing a minute ago, there are differences. There are class biases, political differences. And a lot of the people that run these Black universities don't have the radical Black vision that many in the community assume is there. And their treatment of staff, student, faculty, etc., is often enough horrific. So what I wanted to do with my project is I admit part of it is I just want to tell my own story. But I don't want to tell it, which is going to happen. But I don't want it to happen, but to try to mitigate my own bias and my own bad experiences. I want to be not only, I want to make room for not only other people to offer their negative experiences and tell their stories, but to have others tell the good stuff too. And to try to so it's not just my, you know, singular complaint, and it's maybe put in a more appropriate context. But yeah, so I think a lot of times these Black institutions, churches, politicians, universities, they get away with so much negativity because they are wrapped in that Blackness. The whole issue with Kwanzaa that we were talking about earlier, that I was talking about earlier on here, Black people are afraid to be critical of elements within the community that are creating serious harm because of the promoted mythology, propaganda, and not wanting to air stuff out in the street. But I think at least a little bit differently on that. So that's the short answer. That's at least what I was trying to do. I am trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think after we, you know, like I'm blessed enough to be in a relationship in a community where a lot of the people that are doing things that I can pick up the phone and call, right? Versus just kind of seeing it from afar, like what's happening. I also don't think that you are. I think two things, right? And they are somewhat contradictory Because a lot of the questions that you're raising have been raised by other people that don't have your love for the people, right? Right. So I think that's part one. That's August.
What's up, little man?
Hey, hold up, bro. Let me finish this. I'm gonna get right back to you. Okay.
You didn't charge the phone.
Okay, but let me finish this, bro.
You gotta charge the phone though, man.
Yeah,
come on, man.
Like,
get your priorities together, Pop.
I get no respect, man. No. All right, but so that I think that's important, but also like as a graduate of an HBCU, and a proud graduate of an HBCU, I also think that you're also raising questions that we were asking while we were on campus as well, right? Like largely, I think the lack of compassion and respect from some members of HBCU staff to these Black children that are on these campuses, like I think that's a whole thing in and of itself that has to be addressed. And also just the climate in which, you know, a lot of these people rose to power, right? Like, I know Jackson State and I know Southern and Howard are, you know, like in cities, right? But, you know, ain't nothing else in Grambling, Louisiana. There isn't anything else in at Mississippi Valley State. Like there isn't anything else there. So a lot of these people that are employed at these schools, like that's the only job that they have. That's the only job aside from maybe a jail that's in a lot of these communities, right? And with that, they have been there for 40 years, you know, 30 years, and there isn't a lot of new ideas coming in. And that's where, you know, my point wasn't as clear in our private conversation, but that's where a lack of vision allows the university itself to default to whatever the climate of wherever else is, right? So because we're in America, the lack of a vision on that campus allows the vision of America to be the dominant vision on the campus, right? Because those are the people that are in positions of authority and positions of power. And we do have to ask very hard and challenging questions. But I also think that we cannot become, and I don't think this is you, but I also think that we cannot become so insistent on, you know, holding people accountable that we are acting in the same way that they are, right? Like we're not being kind and we're not being loving to people that have kind of been in this position for 40 years with nothing else to do. And this is really all that they know. Like the world has changed around them and they're still in a position that they can't do anything else because they still got to do all the other stuff that we have to do. And I think it's just, I think we really have to find ways to be more loving and kind, especially with one another, as we kind of move about and kind of learn and grow and change things, you know?
I agree, except that, you know, so like, but for instance, if I'm being critical of things that I've seen at Morgan State University, part of the problem is, to your point, many of the people who are in charge or who make the decisions, they're not interested in the loving, kind, friendly engagement. They're not interested. They are taking advantage of the broader context that they're in. So yeah, these institutions are not, that's part of my point. These are not free, liberated, autonomous zones. They are beholden to more powerful structures. I get all of that. What I'm simply saying is that doesn't mean that they should be excused in like real abuses of their power and of other people. So that's sort of my point. I'm saying, look, I have no problem saying, look, I get the president of an HBCU is not some free, autonomous, all-powerful being who could do whatever they want with the institution. But at the same time, they don't have to participate in so much of the inequalities in pay, in how people are treated on the job, in course reductions and assignments. They don't have to sit and participate in huge disparities in terms of where resources go. So I mean, people can look this stuff up. I mean, look at some of the just the public the salaries of public institutions. You can see people at the top are making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and most of the people doing the work are not. So one of my points would be, yeah, HBCUs. So like Morgan State doesn't get as much money as the University of Maryland, but that doesn't mean that the inequality between positions should mirror the inequality at other institutions. So maybe the salaries at the top do need to be reduced so that the salaries at the bottom could be raised up. And then, yeah, then I would be even more aggressive in joining the fight to get more resources to these universities, to HBCUs, just, you know, because I'm seeing a more of a egalitarian distribution of those resources. But that's not what's happening. So what ends up happening is that they use the wrapping in Blackness and the protection against community critique to keep getting away with stuff. And then meanwhile, internally, people are suffering. And I thought part of, since I've started this project, I honestly thought my experience was far worse relative to others than it is. Mm-hmm. In fact, what I've learned is mine is far better. As bad as I've had, there are too many people, and unfortunately, too many of them are women. There's this, you know, that they're having a horrible experience at these HBCUs. I'm talking about Black women who are committed to their work and to the community and to their students are getting, and if they raise a fuss, you know, they're destroyed. And then the veneer is promoted as, oh man, there's step shows and marching bands and football and homecoming and Blackness and whoever, and don't talk bad about the community. And then I'll stop here. But I saw a couple of years ago, what really troubled me was that one of my former colleagues who was on MSNBC and getting a righteous degree of criticism for his political positions was being defended by other liberal Black mainstream people simply for being at an HBCU. And I'm saying, wait a minute, this dude is wrong on TV. He's wrong in the classroom, in the university. People don't even know how he acts when he's on this campus. He doesn't know what the students think of him. And yet, but all of that gets wiped away because he's at an HBCU and he's supposed to be defended for being there. And I'm saying we have to be able to do, we have to do, something else has to happen. So that's all.
I mean, yeah. And I don't think we disagree on anything.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we disagree. Right. I think there may be a slight difference in approach, but again, like, it's not a distinction that makes a difference. Right. Like,
well, I mean, but I ask you, what should the approach be? If like, how would I better, or how would anyone better encourage Black people to revisit their relationship to these HBCUs?
I think asking a lot of questions kind of does it in a way, like even the critiques that you're laying out, right? Like the differences in pay between folks at the bottom and folks at the top. I think that's fair, but I think asking the question of, well, why is that? Because one of the things that happened at Jackson State that was very disturbing for me was that basically a lot of the lower paying jobs were then outsourced. So like a lot of those people don't even work for the school, right? Like they basically allow another agency to come in and hire those people, and then they give that agency money, and then that agency pays those people. And it was happening to one, reduce people from the state retirement rolls, to save the state money, but also like to take that cost away from the university, like the benefits and stuff off of the university's plate. So asking the question, well, you know, why are we doing these types of things? I think allows people to kind of, when you're reading it 140 characters at a time or whatever the Twitter limit is, a lot of that context is missing. And then it just sounds like he just said HBCUs is trash, which is absolutely not your argument at all. Like it is holding, it is maintaining this, it is establishing the standard and then holding us to that standard so that we don't get to kind of, I think your language is cover ourselves in blackness and that absolves us of critique. I think figuring out a way to do that so that people that you do not disagree with can use your tweets to make points that you weren't making. I think that's my main thing. Like again, because I know you well enough to know that what he not saying is HBCUs is pointless and stupid. What he's talking about is a question of, are HBCUs this thing that they say they are? Because if you say you this thing, then we need to see that in the works that you're doing, right? All I'm saying is the way that some of the ways that I was reading the things was like, I don't really know what we're doing here. Because again, I'm not even seeing the tweets in order. Like I gotta click on your name to read to get further context. Like I'm only seeing a piece of it. And that piece that I'm seeing is just kind of like, well, what's happening here? And that's all I was on. Like I knew what I was reading was not what you were saying. So I just wanted to know what you were saying.
So I invite you and others to go to our mixwhatilike.org and participate in the project. There's a series of questions I'm asking people to respond to. And you and folks can tell, and I'm trying to get people to tell, it's really just to get people to tell their story. And then eventually I want to edit it into a book and see about publishing it. Yeah. So I want to collect as many stories as I can get. So if people have, so you're invited to share your positive experiences. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to offer up some balance so that not only is it not just me complaining, but it's also not just others who are complaining, but that it does try to show. Anyway, I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out because I haven't finished collecting everybody's stuff and I haven't read everything yet. But I'm hoping that it will show, like, look, there's a lot of positive that can occur here. There are some things that need to be addressed, and we can't keep letting people, as you quoted, cover themselves in blackness and get away with it. Like, there's a lot of hustling going on. Like I said, again, when I'm told directly, Dr. Ball, your problem is you want to create new knowledge, and we don't do that here. Your job is to create menial laborers for the communications industry, end quote. That is a quote. That is a verbatim quote I was given from an upper level administrator some years ago. That I use as just a summary of all the experiences I've been having. And that I think does sort of give an idea of where these entities are situated and the people that run them. They're not interested in radical critique, in changing the world necessarily. They want, in many cases, they want Black people to be better American performers. And ultimately, they want for themselves to get a bigger check. And then when they go out and talk to the community, they're talking about Blackness and independence, and we're not around white folks, and all of that is valuable. But then you get in there and it's like there's too much negativity. So that's why I'm saying I'm arguing, or I'm even asking. I'm saying not a different world, but in part I'm asking, is it a different world from the rest of the country and other universities? So.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, because again, like, I don't think we disagree. I don't even think the distinction makes a difference. I'm just saying, like, hey, the way I was reading it was definitely not what you were saying. But I wasn't quite sure what you were saying. And now that I better understand it, it won't even read the same way, right? Like, because I have that. The other thing that I do want to say though is that, and you said it at the end, was that there is some value to it.
Yeah.
Right. Like you said that. Like that's exactly what
of course.
You said. And I have never heard you not say that. Like I want to make sure that I'm clear. I have never heard you not say that. I also think though that a lot of times what we have to recognize and realize, and this is very that are being oppressed by these systems are largely in agreement with those systems. And that's
Right.
where I think we have to figure out, like, how do we get people to understand that the goal is to not replicate this, but to build something new, right? And I don't know how we do that, right? Like, and it's not like we do it by trying to do it, right? But I don't know how we turn that corner, because let's be clear, we are friends here. As an old man that graduated from an HBCU, some of the graduates that I come across that graduated from an HBCU are embarrassing. I am very embarrassed by people that have interviewed to work with me, people that have been in positions that I had to work laterally with in my current position, and I'm ashamed, right? Because we are definitely only replicating this system, not kind of building a new thing that comes out of it, because we don't really see a problem. Because, you know, the worker loves capitalism too. And I don't know how we really engage with that, because it's like you recognize like you losing because of this, right? And the goal is to replicate it and figure it out in a way that you can win. And you know,
it's the same thing I was arguing in the other part of the show. It's we need organized political power, and assuming that, you know, sending a handful of our community into these institutions is going to have a net positive impact is not fair. It's not fair to the understanding what these institutions are, and it's not fair to the experiences that the students on average get when they go there. You know, they're not being trained on radical reorganization of the world. They're being trained and being told repeatedly, you're here because this is what's going to make you make more money. This is going to help your family. This is what's going to, you know, and then after that, there's this idea, well, that will be then good for the community, but that's not how it works.
As Dr. Davis in the history department at Jackson State will always say, I need a compelling document to prove that, Brother Joseph.
How about that? Yeah, I like that.
Compelling document. Like, because, you know, like we just keep arriving at these, we keep taking the next logical step and wondering why we remain in the same position. Like, eventually we have to do something different. And that's why I just wanted to make sure that, like, I'm telling you, I don't disagree with what you're doing. Like, I'm not pushing back against what you're doing, as much as it was just like, help me to really understand what we got going on here. Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And I hope you'll participate in the project, and that your voice be heard to the extent you want it known, because there is an option to do it anonymously. But listen, before we get out of here, what are you working on these days? What is politically, musically, what's happening?
All right, so I went to many years ago. I went to the Allied Media Conference in Detroit, and I learned that I was far more sexist than I thought I was, and you know, took those very bitter pills and smiled on it, and started doing a lot more learning and a lot more work. And arrived working for an organization called the Lighthouse Black Girls Project. And basically, I am a creative director there. I think my title recently changed, but the website is loveblackgirls.org. Check us out. We do work with Black women and girls throughout the Southeast. One of the things that I do there that's really exciting is I work with men. So basically engaging men around women's issues and understanding the ways that we show up in these places that replicate systems of oppression. And, you know, like really engage with that. So that's fun. The work that I'm doing is telling stories with videos. So, you know, working my camera, telling stories, still using my pen a little bit. And I got an album that's actually done The name of it is Radio Free Jafrica, August. I'll send you an early copy of it. I'll send it to you. Yeah,
that's what's up.
Yeah, it's done.
You said it's coming out in August?
No, that's the name of it. Radio Free Jafrica, August.
Oh, got you.
So Miles Garvey was named after my oldest boy. August is my youngest boy. So
that's right. Got you.
Yeah, so we got that. It's done. I don't know what I'm doing with it. Like, there have been a couple conversations about releasing it. I'll just tell you, Jared, just straight up and down. Just after August was born, I got divorced. And music just kind of felt like it was really involved in that split. So I just kind of sit in a weird place with it. I recognize the value of it, like people like you that I respect and the relationships that I've been able to build with it. But it also just feels like it took a lot from me. In learning how to just kind of reassemble my life, because it was always like husband, artist, father, right? So now that the husband part of it is off, what does it like, who am I really? So I got pieces of things. I still write a good bit. Like, I still hear things, and I respond to those. But yeah, like, I'm figuring it out, man. But I put it out this year. I was supposed to put it out, well, next year, but this year. I was supposed to put it out earlier in 2021. But I put it out in 2022. But I'll shoot it over to you. Like, it's actually done. I even send you the image that I'm gonna use for the cover of it, which is fire. But I
look forward to it.
Yeah, and
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's it, man. But I'm really out here, man. Like, just really trying to figure out how to make, the world that we live in better than it was when we were born into it. That's it.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Because I still, how did that line go? What if I could hear freedom? Oh man, how did you do that line? What if I
heard Stokely Carmichael yell at Black Power for the first time? I write rhymes to the rhythm of my heartbeat, pretending these hot shells dropping to the street. Man, I met Mike Thelwell at a book signing. And it was crazy. Like, I was out here bad, but I had that CD, and I was like, bro, like, I would always hear about Stokely Kwame being in Jackson. But I think he died like 97, something like that. 96, 97, somewhere around there.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyhow,
it was 98 even. Anyway, yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
yeah.
I can't remember. That's terrible.
But like, like, he would always be around for the most part, but like, I had never really gotten a chance to meet him. And just like, that was one of the first songs that I wrote in my pivot from foolishness into saying something. And I was just so proud of it because I wrote it in like 15 minutes. Like, I just like the whole thing, like chorus, verses, like, all of it, like in like 15 minutes. Like, it was like my hands couldn't move fast enough to get it out. Like, I'm not like exaggerating for like but I gave him that, and then he told me, and I told him that chorus, and he was like, bro, like, what's crazy, Thelwell was speaking to me. He was like, what's crazy is I know that he would want you to have this book. And he signed my copy of Ready for Revolution and gave it to me like in a trade for the CD. And I just like, wow, that's crazy. So yeah, like Stokely.
That's what's up.
Yeah, Stokely is like, and not just like the things that, we hear or whatever, but like the things that he wrote, like in Black Power, in like I think the book was like Stokely Speaks, and there was something else like reading those like really shaped my political development early on. So yeah, like that's live for me.
Well, look, man, I appreciate you, man. Definitely love the work, and love to the family, to the young ones, and I look forward to catching up with you again, man. And reach out anytime, man. I love it, man.
Hey, I will. And you saw that I'm a subscriber now. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Right on.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber. I didn't really know what I was doing. And then I do want to ask a question to the chat. No. It's a very easy question. Leah Boggs. Did you go to Jackson State?
Oh, wow. Leah, is that you?
I think Leah went to Jackson State. Like I asked her in the chat one day and she didn't respond. But yeah,
Maybe
like I
she
just
didn't want to
wanted
get
to know.
called out like that.
Oh, well,
Leah,
my
Leah,
bad.
you get that's you. That's you.
Yeah. So yeah. But that's it, man. Y'all hit
Yeah, I'm
my
gonna stick
line.
around for a couple minutes. I'm gonna stick
All right,
around for a couple minutes. But be careful, Skipp.
what that mean?
You call it out, Leah. She might not want to be called. I don't know. That's what I'm assuming he means. I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
that. No. Okay, Leah said no. She went to A&T. She went to
Oh,
A&T.
okay. All right, sweet. So it was a chick that went to Jackson State. Her name was Leah, and she was like early into the Black Power stuff too. And I was just like, man, this is crazy. So like it was like a group of us that kind of worked out. But hey, anyhow, man, right on to the real stuff, to the fake, man.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you, man. Take good care, man. All right, now. All right, everybody. I'm gonna take a quick break. I'll come back and check some of these comments in just a second. Don't go anywhere. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, so yeah, I got a couple of minutes. I will let me look at some of these comments and I'll see what I can. Yeah, I heard that too, Jeff. He said he's working on it. We all in progress. But let me just see if there's anything that I can respond to quickly, or see what I might need to tighten up for part 2 on Monday, because there was more I wanted to get to. Including more. I want to watch more of the Hill Harper video with everybody, because it helps. And then there's a couple other pieces I wanted to get to as well. So we could pick up on some of that. Somebody I saw was suggesting that what link am I looking to socialize, Brother Tafari? Somebody was saying, I forgot what, I can't find it, that I should get to the blockchain socialist and invite him on. We've been in touch. And honestly, the right now, the biggest issue is that these are really the only times that are at this point easy for me to do the show. And he's not available at these times. He's in somewhere else in the world, I think, and on time zone stuff, whatever. But in an exchange we had in DM, I was saying, I'll admit, I don't know exactly how it read to him, but I'll admit an increasing frustration with all of the people sending me stuff, saying I need to look at this and read that. And having done at least a good amount of that, I'm not seeing anybody addressing the issues that I'm raising as concern. So whether it's Glenn Greenwald, everybody from Glenn Greenwald to the blockchain socialist to Isaiah Jackson and Hill Harper and whoever else, I'm not seeing responses to my argument looking for an explanation as to how any technology, but blockchain included, change social relationships. I don't think there's any historical precedent for that. And B, how specifically blockchain and cryptocurrency changes existing social relationships and leads us to some revolutionary potential. And by revolution, I'm at minimum talking about radical redistribution of all of the goods, services, and wealth created that we all help create. The next level would be adjusting how wealth is developed, what constitutes wealth, and who has it. And then there's other stages, I guess, to improve humanity we could continue to get to. But initially, I'm not seeing anything about redistribution or political power, which is ultimately what I'm saying we need, which makes all of this moot. Either there is no wealth and we do some other thing with society, or all the wealth that is created, since we all participate in creating that wealth, all of us, it needs to be redistributed in such a way that there's not this level of inequality or inequality at all. I'm not seeing it. So I told him that. That was my point. I was like, man, I'm reading your stuff. I'm listening to your interviews, and I'm not hearing it. And then I said to him, will one of you address what I'm saying? And all I got from him was that he said something vague, like there's some things that I think I could have, something like that. So I'm waiting. I mean, I don't have to be right. Like I don't have to be right. I'm happy to interview people about how right they are. I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing. In fact, I'm seeing the opposite. And everything I am seeing is saying this is the Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto is pure and unadulterated fantasy. Yeah, I don't know. I hear you. I don't know. No. There's a dude, the Bitcoin Socialist, has a Twitter handle. The Bitcoin Socialist got a website, has given a number of interviews and stuff. Has a whole, and I mean, he's no bad guy and he's no dummy. But I'm not seeing the value. I'm not getting it. So, for instance. And this was brought up in the video that, yeah, I'll have to just do this Monday. I don't think I have time to really get to do it. I don't want to rush through it, but so I'll set this, we'll do a part 2 on Monday and we'll go and I'll show you some of at least what I'm talking about here. There is this, what was I just going to say? Because it was Michael Hudson and Max Keiser. First of all, the Bitcoin, the brother Isaiah Jackson, when he starts off his book on Bitcoin and Black America by talking about how Max Keiser on Russia Today or RTTV was like the one who put him onto this. And if anybody has ever watched Max, I used to watch him regularly. It's interesting commentary. He's certainly easy to watch. I mean, he's got that personality. He's got former Wall Street guys. He's got that sort of brokers, sort of, that salesman sort of, that he's got the gift of gab, so to speak. So it's not a bad watch. It's just not the analysis we need. And when he and Michael Hudson were going back on oh, that's what it was, because Glenn Greenwald said the same thing. Well, Hillary Clinton is saying that crypto is a threat to the dollar and is a threat. So therefore, those of us who are opposed to Hillary Clinton should see this as a positive. So Max raised the same kind of question to Michael Hudson, and Hudson's answer I don't fully understand in terms of the details of the economics he was offering. But his point was that crypto is not a threat, Bitcoin included, is not a threat to the dollar, in part, as I was even showing earlier, in part, people assess and measure the value of Bitcoin based on the dollar. That people are saying Bitcoin's value has risen to $40,000, $50,000 to buy it. You need to use dollars to buy the crypto. So it's just like so it's like a version. So in other words, it's not a threat in the way that Hillary Clinton was describing. And Hudson had a whole different way of explaining it. And it was more so what Richard Wolff said was what they felt was the real threat, that a bubble will be created outside of the bubble they create on Wall Street. And that when it bursts, as it will, they won't be able to regulate and control it, and that will have a negative reverberating impact on the established economy. Because if you didn't create the bubble that you can then create money to fix, and the bubble is created in a market or a space that you're not controlling, and people are investing in it, and it bursts, it's like they're giving money they should be giving to you to someone else. And that's their concern, but it's not in the sense that it's an extinction level event in terms of the civilization that many people might want to point it to. And how could it be? How does poor people exchanging anonymously in an unregulated, unprotected market currency, how does that lead to political power? I just don't hear it. So anyway, my point is I admit I'm getting, the more work I put in, I want that work matched. And if people don't see my argument as being valuable, that's fine. But then don't keep asking me to read other people's arguments. I get it. I don't have to be I'm not big like that dude that said he reached out, said he wanted to debate me, Reggie something. And then he goes on Twitter and says only people with 20,000 followers or more. He said anybody with 20,000 followers or more that wants to debate me. So I tweeted back to him and I said, well, you invited me, but I only have, I know, not even 12,000. So I guess I'm not even, I don't have enough followers to be debated. What was his name? What's his name? He one of these black hustlers out here, pitching these fantasies. Look, I don't want mine or yours or anyone's economic stability to be based on their quote unquote financial literacy or ability to work the markets. That's not how it should be. In fact, each of us it should be possible for all of us to be as financially illiterate as many of us are, and as many in these spaces claim we shouldn't be, and it should have no impact on our ability to have health care, decent food, housing, safety, peace, spiritual freedom, the ability to build and work with whoever we want. So this idea that we got to get into fintech and we got to get our $500 worth of Satoshis as a political strategy, it's insanity to me. Anyway, and my bad, folks. If there are any questions or comments I can get to quickly, or something you want me to address more fully on Monday, please put it in the comments real quick, or send me an email or whatever, and I'll. He's the author of Bitcoin in Black America, and his name comes up everywhere in these discussions. And his book, I'm supposed to get a copy here shortly, but in all the interviews I've seen, it's just not, is it not? That's a good question. That's a good question. I would love to talk with somebody. Maybe we can do that. But I do hope, my inexpertise notwithstanding, I do hope what I was trying to show from earlier from Rodney in this issue of African socialism, Ujamaa, and Kwanzaa made sense. But I'm happy to be checked on any of that. What link from Skipp Coon? What link? My bad. Oh, I don't know what you mean by that. Uh-oh. What happened there? Oh, I see what you. Oh, I see. Yeah. No, I see. I'm looking at some of the comments about from Salifu. Yeah, I know. Listen to the music that Skipp's critiques Jared come from a place in London. Yeah. No, I mean, I get it, and I appreciate Skipp for that. Like he said, look, I'm not understanding. I don't want you to be misunderstood, but at the same time, I agree. I don't think we should have to hold our anyway. I don't know. I'm working on that. I don't know exactly. I go back and forth on that, trying to adjust the argument to be more palatable. But at the same time, I mean, sometimes it just feels like if you raise any criticism, it doesn't go well. So anyway, let me yeah. I mean, that's really that's really what it is. Anyway, listen, good people. I really appreciate you coming through. Those who are going to hear this or see this later, I appreciate you as well. Thanks to Skipp Coon. Thanks to all of you for making the chat and the commentary lively. I'll be back on Monday with a part 2 of this discussion, and come back and try to tighten up on a couple things and get to some of the pieces I didn't get to, and maybe some more stuff. Who knows what's going to happen over the weekend? But be safe out there. If you're celebrating tonight, definitely stay safe. Have a good time. And as always, as Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. as I know everybody in this space is. So I'll catch you next year. Peace, everybody. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.